My name is Grace, and I am 27 years. Last year, at my cousin's wedding, I did something nobody in my family had done in 20 years. I told my Aunt Patricia no. Not quietly. Not apologetically. Not with the careful diplomatic softening that everyone in my family had learned to apply to every interaction with her, the particular linguistic cushioning of people who have spent decades managing a woman who confused authority with love. Just no. Clearly. Directly. In front of 37 people. And the silence that followed was the most honest thing that had happened at a family gathering in longer than I could remember. Let me tell you about Aunt Patricia. She was 58 years old. My mother's older sister. The kind of woman who entered rooms the way weather systems did, announcing herself through atmosphere before she was fully present, changing the temperature of things simply by arriving. She was not cruel. That was the complicated part. The part that made it difficult to name for so long. Patricia was not a villain in the obvious sense. She did not shout, did not demean, did not deploy the obvious weapons of a toxic person. She was worse than that. She was certain, completely, unshakably certain that she knew best. About everything. About how family gatherings should be organized and who should sit where and what the correct way to raise children was, and which career choices were sensible and which were foolish, and what every member of our extended family should prioritize, value, and want from their lives. And she communicated the certainty in the particular way of someone who has never been challenged, not as opinion but as fact. Not as preference but as decree. My mother had been managing Patricia for 40 years. My aunts and uncles had been managing her for decades. My cousins and I had grown up managing her, learning, before we understood why, the specific art of nodding and redirecting and absorbing Patricia's pronouncements without agreeing to them, but without disagreeing either, which was the particular exhausting diplomacy of everyone in our family. Nobody said no to Patricia. Until the wedding. My cousin Sophie was getting married. Sophie, 25, the warmest person I knew, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays and brought soup when people were sick, and had spent her entire life being exactly the kind of person that families like ours needed more of. She was marrying a man named James who was gentle and funny and looked at her like she was the most interesting thing in any room. It was supposed to be a beautiful day. Patricia had other ideas. The issues had started 6 months before the wedding. Patricia had opinions about the venue. Sophie's chosen venue was too casual. About the flowers, not classic enough. About the guest list, there were people invited who didn't belong at a family wedding, by which Patricia meant people she didn't know and therefore couldn't control. Sophie had absorbed all of it. She was 25 and she had been managing Patricia her whole life, and she absorbed it the way we all did, nodding, redirecting, occasionally crying to me on the phone at 11 p.m. I just want one day, she had said. One day that's mine. It will be yours, I had said. I had meant it. I just hadn't known yet what it would cost. The moment happened at the reception. Sophie and James had just finished their first dance. Beautiful, unhurried, the kind of moment that belongs entirely to two people and that everyone else is simply privileged to witness. The applause had barely finished when Patricia stood up. She had not been given the microphone. She had simply stood up, in the particular way of someone who has never needed permission, and begun speaking. About how proud the family was. About James's family and how welcome they were. About the traditional values that had always guided our family. About what a marriage required. Sophie's face. I watched Sophie's face from across the room. The smile that was staying in place through sheer force of will. The eyes that had gone slightly distant, the specific expression of someone who has removed herself slightly from her own experience, because the experience is not what it was supposed to be. One day that's mine. I stood up. Patricia, I said. The room went quiet. Patricia turned. Looked at me with the expression she reserved for interruptions. Not angry, simply uncomprehending. Nobody interrupted Patricia. "This is Sophie and James's moment," I said. "Not yours." The silence that followed lasted approximately 4 seconds. And then Sophie laughed. The real kind. For seconds. I counted them the way you count things when your nervous system has registered that something significant has happened and needs to process it in real time. For seconds of complete silence in a wedding reception venue with 37 people holding their breath. And then Sophie laughed. Not politely. Not the careful social laugh of someone managing a situation. The full uncontained laugh of someone who has been holding something for 6 months and has just watched it lifted. James laughed too, the warm immediate laugh of a man who had heard the stories and was watching the story resolve in real time. And then, and this was the part that surprised me most, my mother laughed. Quietly. Almost to herself. The small sound of someone releasing something they have been carrying for 40 years. Patricia did not laugh. She sat down. Not dramatically, Patricia did not do dramatic. She simply sat, with the particular composure of someone who has been challenged for the first time in memory and is deciding how to respond, and she was very still. My heart was doing something significant in my chest. I sat down too. My cousin Marcus, 29, the quietest of us, the one who processed everything internally and revealed the results weeks later, leaned over. "Grace," he said quietly. "I know," I said. I know," I said. The reception continued. The music started again. People began talking, moving, the normal rhythm of a celebration reasserting itself. Sophie and James moved through their guests with the ease of 2 people whose day had just been returned to them. Sophie found me an hour later. She hugged me without saying anything first. Just hugged me, the real kind, with both arms and actual hold. "Thank you," she said into my shoulder. "It was your day," I said. "Nobody has ever," she stopped. "Nobody has ever just said it like that." "I know," I said. I don't know why I did. But I did know. I had been watching Sophie's face. And Sophie's face had looked exactly the way my face had felt at every family gathering for 27 years, the smile held in place by will, the eyes slightly distant, the particular cost of absorbing Patricia's certainty in real time. I had been tired of that face. On myself. On Sophie. On everyone. Patricia called my mother that night. I know because my mother called me at 11 p.m. "Patricia called," she said. "I know," I said. "She's upset." "I imagine so," I said. "Grace." "Mom," I said. Sophie told me she just wanted one day that was hers. Was that too much to ask? My mother was quiet for a moment. "No," she said. "It wasn't." "Then why didn't anyone say something?" I said. "Before I did. At the wedding." A longer silence. "Because we've been managing Patricia for a very long time," my mother said. "And managing her felt easier than confronting her." "Is it easier?" I said. "No," she said. "It's just more familiar." I sat with that. "What does she want?" I said. "An apology," my mother said. "From me?" "Yes." I thought about Sophie's laugh. The real kind. The full uncontained kind. "I'm not going to apologize," I said. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I had not expected. "I know," she said. "I'm not asking you to. My cousin Marcus called me on Monday. Marcus, who processed everything internally. Marcus, who had never in 29 years said anything directly confrontational to Patricia or anyone else in the family. Marcus, who had sat beside me at the wedding and said my name in a voice I couldn't quite read. "I've been thinking," he said when I answered. "About the wedding," I said. "About all of it," he said. "My whole life, Grace. I've been thinking about my whole life." I sat down. "Tell me," I said. He talked for an hour. About growing up with Patricia's certainty as the background noise of every family gathering. About the career he hadn't pursued because Patricia had called it impractical, He had wanted to be a musician, had been genuinely talented, had let it go at 22 when Patricia had spent an entire Christmas dinner explaining the statistics of musical careers in the particular tone of someone who believes they are being helpful. About the girlfriend he had broken up with because Patricia had found her not quite right for the family, a phrase that had never been explained, but had been deployed with enough certainty that he had absorbed it as truth. About 29 years of nodding and redirecting and absorbing. You said no, he said. In front of everyone. And nothing bad happened. Something happened, I said. Patricia is upset. Patricia is always upset when she doesn't get what she wants, he said. That's not something bad happening. That's just Patricia. I thought about that distinction. Marcus, I said. What do you want to do with this? I want to have a conversation, he said. With the family. Not just you and me, everyone. The cousins. The aunts and uncles. I want to actually talk about what Patricia's been doing and what it's cost us. She'll find out, I said. Good, he said. The conversation happened on a Saturday. Marcus had organized it, sent a message to the family group chat, minus Patricia, asking if people wanted to talk. The response had been overwhelming. Not just cousins, aunts, uncles, even my grandmother, 81 and sharp as she had ever been, who had responded with, finally. We gathered at my Aunt Helen's house. Helen, Patricia's younger sister, the quieter one, the one who had spent 40 years in Patricia's shadow and had, I discovered that Saturday, a great deal to say. 11 people in Helen's living room. The particular energy of people who have been carrying something and have finally been given permission to put it down. We talked for 4 hours. Stories emerged that I hadn't known. Marcus's music, his aunts had known about it, had watched him let it go, had not said anything because saying something would have required challenging Patricia. My Aunt Helen's business idea from 15 years ago, Patricia had called it not realistic, and Helen had quietly abandoned it. My cousin Diane's first marriage, a man she had loved who had been systematically excluded from family gatherings by Patricia until he had simply stopped coming, and then the marriage had followed. For hours of things that had been filed away. My grandmother sat in the corner and listened. At the end she said, in the particular direct voice of someone who has lived 81 years and has stopped softening things. I should have said something decades ago. I thought I was keeping the peace. I was just letting the peace be kept at your expense. The room was very quiet. What do we do now? Diane said. Everyone looked at each other. Then they looked at me. I had started this. At a wedding with a no, in front of 37 people. I had not planned to start anything. But here we were. We talked to her, I said. Together. Not to attack her. Not to punish her. But to say clearly what has been true and what needs to be different going forward. She won't receive it well, Helen said. Probably not, I said. But that's her choice. We can only control what we say. We asked Patricia to come to Helen's house the following Saturday. We did not tell her why, not because we were being strategic, but because telling her in advance would have given her time to prepare a counter-narrative, and we needed, for once, to be the ones with the information advantage. She arrived at 2 p.m. Impeccably dressed, as always. The particular composure of someone who has spent decades being the most certain person in any room. She looked around Helen's living room at the assembled family, and something shifted in her expression, a micro-recalibration, quickly composed. What is this? She said. A conversation, I said. Please sit down. She sat. We had agreed beforehand on an approach. Not accusations, observations. Not you did this, but this is what happened and this is what it cost. Dr. Claire, my therapist, whom I had called the week before for guidance, had helped me understand the difference. Marcus went first. He talked about his music. About the Christmas dinner. About 29 years of letting Patricia's certainty shape his choices. He spoke quietly, without anger, with the particular precision of someone who has thought carefully about what he wants to say. Patricia opened her mouth. "Let him finish," Helen said. Patricia closed her mouth. Helen went next. Her business idea. 15 years. The particular cost of a woman who had stopped trusting her own judgment because someone with more certainty had consistently applied doubt to it. Diane. Her marriage. The systematic exclusion. The loss. My grandmother. The decades of watching. The peace kept at everyone's expense. My mother. 40 years of managing. The specific exhaustion of it. Patricia was very still through all of it. When everyone had spoken, the room was quiet. I looked at my aunt. At 58 years of certainty. At the composure that was, I could see now, not quite as steady as usual, something moving underneath it, the particular interior weather of someone being shown something they have not let themselves see. "Patricia," I said, "I want to ask you something." She looked at me. "Did you know?" I said. "That it felt this way? That the certainty, the way you moved through our family, did you know what it was costing?" A long silence. "No," she said. Simply. Without defense. "I thought I was helping," she said. "I thought I knew things. I had experience. I thought I was giving you the benefit of it." "You were taking something," Marcus said. Gently. "Not giving." Another silence. Patricia looked at her hands. "Marcus," she said. "Your music." "Yes," he said. "Are you still?" "I've started again," he said. "This year." After Grace said no at the wedding, he stopped. Something shifted. I started again. Something crossed Patricia's face. Not the managed composure. Something underneath it. "I didn't know," she said. "That you were still." "You never asked," he said. "That's the thing. You never asked what we wanted. You told us." The room held that sentence for a moment. "I don't know how to not tell," Patricia said. Quietly. The most honest thing I had ever heard her say. "We know," I said. "That's what we're asking you to learn." 6 months after the conversation. My family was different. Not dramatically, not in the way of families in films where a single confrontation resolves decades of pattern overnight, but different in the small accumulating ways that actually count. Marcus was playing music again. Not professionally, he had a career, a life, that was not being dismantled and rebuilt. But playing. Twice a week at a small venue near his apartment, the particular joy of someone who had reclaimed something they had set down and discovered it had been waiting. He had invited the family to come one Friday. Patricia had come. She had sat in the 3rd row and listened for an hour, and at the end she had found Marcus and said, "You're very good." Just that. No qualifier. "No, but have you thought about?" Just, "You're very good." Marcus had told me about it on the phone. His voice had something in it I hadn't heard before. "She said I was very good," he said. "I know," I said. "That's the first time," he said. "I know," I said. Helen had relaunched her business idea. Smaller than the original vision, 15 years had passed and the landscape had changed. But real. An interior design consultancy, running from her home, the first client signed in April. Patricia had sent flowers. No note about whether it was realistic. Just flowers. Helen had called me after. "Flowers," she said. "Progress," I said. "Small progress," she said. "Small is where it starts," I said. Patricia and I had lunch in May. Her suggestion, which was itself significant. Patricia did not suggest things. Patricia decided things and presented them as inevitable. A suggestion was new. We sat across from each other at a restaurant she had chosen and navigated the first 20 minutes with the careful conversation of two people who have been through something and are not yet sure what they are to each other on the other side. Then she said, "The wedding." "Yes," I said. "I've thought about it," she said. "About what you said. About it being Sophie's moment." "And?" I said. "I was doing what I always do," she said. "Filling the space. Making the moment, making it about what I thought it should be rather than what it was. Yes, I said. I don't know why I do that, she said. I think you do, I said carefully. She looked at me. My mother, she said. After a moment. My mother was she was not present. She was there and not there. And I learned that if I filled the space, if I was the one who knew things and directed things, then I was necessary. I was. She stopped. Seen, I said. Yes, she said quietly. Seen. I sat with that. With the image of a girl who had learned to take up all the space, because taking up space meant being visible. Who had become a woman who controlled rooms because controlled rooms didn't leave her invisible. Not a villain. A person with a wound who had handled it in ways that wounded others. I'm not excusing it, she said. I know, I said. But I wanted you to understand, she said. I do, I said. And Patricia, the family still loves you. That was never the question. The question was whether there was room for us inside your certainty. Is there, she said. We're having lunch, I said. That's a start. She almost smiled. We ate our lunch. Imperfectly. Carefully. Two women navigating new territory with the particular attention of people who have decided the territory is worth navigating. Sophie called me on a Sunday in June. How's married life? I said. Perfect, she said. Asterisk, genuinely perfect. A pause. Patricia sent us a gift last week. What kind of gift? I said. A kitchen thing, Sophie said. Something I had mentioned months ago wanting. She remembered. She remembered, I said. She remembered, Sophie said. And there was a note. Just wishing you both every happiness. No instructions. No opinions. Just wishing us happiness. I sat in my apartment in the June afternoon and felt something I wanted to name precisely. Not triumph. Not the satisfaction of having won something. Something quieter. The particular feeling of a family that has looked at itself honestly and decided to try to be better. Not perfect. Not healed. Not the resolution of decades in 6 months. But trying. All of them. In the small accumulating ways that actually count. I want to say something to you. If you have a Patricia in your family, someone whose certainty takes up all the oxygen, whose authority was never granted but simply assumed, whose love comes wrapped in control, you are allowed to say no. Not dramatically. Not with the intention to wound. But clearly. In front of people if necessary. With the simple directness of someone who has decided that one day, one wedding, one dinner, one ordinary moment belongs to the person it belongs to and not to the person who has decided everything belongs to them. Saying no to Patricia did not destroy my family. It gave my family permission to finally be honest. And honest families, imperfect, navigating, still figuring it out, are stronger than managed ones. Every time. Say the true thing. Even if your voice shakes. Even if the silence afterward lasts 4 seconds. The silence is where the real things begin. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Do you have a Patricia in your family? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. Tell me where you are watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Until next time, say the true thing. Even if your voice shakes.